welcome back to me talking about my version of the Marauders in podcast form with Emma. Yay! It has been a while. There was an unintentional 3-week hiatus that we were hoping would not happen. But yeah, so I was like so ready to like be on a schedule. I felt like I was getting into my college vibe, you know? And then, so like 2 days after I posted the last episode, I ended up in the hospital and Emma ended up in the hospital. So, yeah, so that was fun. Emma, you haven't told me like the full story of what happened. Do you want to?
I'm trying to remember because it feels like it was like a long time ago.
I know,
but
same
I'm
like
like,
mine.
have we not recorded since?
I know,
I
because
guess
it
not.
happened, it was 2 days after the last episode was posted that I ended up in the hospital, so it was like a day after that you did.
Yeah. Oh. So, I don't know. So I was playing basketball. And
For a class.
it is a fun class though. But
You're getting a college credit to just play basketball.
To play basketball. But
Good gosh.
So I was like going and then I got hit in the nose with someone chin. And so he just kind of like crashed into me and it hit like right there. And I was like, when you get hit that hard, you're kind of like stunned for a second.
Oh yeah.
And then I just like took a sip of water and then I just started like playing again because like, and then like, I don't know, I was fine. And then I was like walking back from the class and then it started to like really hurt because I think like I wasn't like playing anymore. So I didn't have like the adrenaline.
Oh yeah.
And it was just bad. And it was like super swollen. And I like had ice that I was like icing it like all day. And then that night I had like a chemistry review for my exam. And so I was gonna go to that, but then I felt horrible. And so there was like a Zoom option, so I was doing that and I literally just like fell on the floor. So I was laying on the ground listening to this Zoom call. And I took my temperature and I had like a high fever. And then it was just rough. She like took me to like get it checked out and they were like, there's nothing we can really do except you just gotta like hope it like fixes itself. And like I couldn't breathe through my nose at all. And it was, I don't know, it was a lot and it was not fun and it really hurt. And I also had the fever and I don't know. So then I just got like some Benadryl and like took that and I was like, for a week, I kind of just like only slept and that was all I did. And I was like, wow, this is Elizabeth's life. And I was like, that was not a fun week.
Yeah, no, it's not fun. You think like sleeping forever and you're like, yeah, let's do this. And then it's so boring. No. You're just like, why? My gosh. Yeah, so that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I've taken 2 chemistry exams since our last episode. So that's...
Exams?
Yeah. So, like,
Bruh.
That's been... Yeah. And then I had, like, it's exam week this week, and I had 4, and I got through them all, and I'm just mostly glad it's over.
Yeah. For me, my midterms, they either have, like... Your teacher can just choose if you're going to have 2 midterms or if you're just going to have one that's like actually in the middle of the term, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so my first kind of clump of them for the groups that are doing 2 just was this week. And then in a couple weeks, I'll have the ones that are like the midterms for those classes. And then I'll have the second round of the other ones. So it's just kind of a lot, but it's not a ton because they are all kind of split up like that. But it's just, yeah. Exam season is upon us, and we've only been here for like 6 weeks.
Yeah, and one of those weeks annoying. I couldn't do literally anything.
I know. Okay, I'm gonna actually run and fill up my water if you don't mind.
I had to get my own water.
Okay. Girly. She moved to exactly where I'm sitting. Like exactly right on my spot. Girl, you can't... Oh my gosh. You gotta move. Okay, I guess we're gonna sit on me. Okay. Snuffles, raise your head up. Oh, look at you. What a good girl. All right, so my trip to the ER. So basically it went like this. I was fine all day, and then at night I was like I started to get a headache, and I was like that's annoying, but it's fine. I'll just, lay down and it'll be whatever. And then so I remember it at 7 p.m. I was fine. Um and then about 8 things started getting wacky. Um, and what I mean by that is, like I've talked about before, dysautonomia, especially, I don't have a specified diagnosis for it. Like some people have PTOS and stuff like that. I'm just kind of susceptible to any sort of autonomic dysfunction, and so things can just kind of stop working. And usually it happens one at a time. Like I'll wake up and I'll be like, "Oh, I'm having a bad day and I'm pretty dizzy today." Or, "Oh, like, my stomach is hurting more today," or, "I'm really tired
Mm-hmm.
today," or something like that. So, all of the things that can go wrong with autonomic dysfunction went wrong within the span of an hour. And it was so fast. Like again, like at 8 I was fine. By 8:30 I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm dying. I had a fever come on in the fastest way I ever have. I tried to stand up. I couldn't really stand up. I was like, okay, I really need to get Advil and take a couple of them because I have a fever. And, like, obviously that helps with it. And I'm like, and maybe that'll be better. And, like, hopefully this will just go away. And it just kept on getting worse. And so I was going to get Advil and get my roommates and washcloth and try and get some food or something, to kind of knock me out of this. And I could barely stand up to go across the room to get my Advil. So then I texted my roommates and I was like, hey guys, not doing too well. Um, Turns out it's not fun. So I had them bring me, like, cold washcloth, some food, some stuff like that. And then when I put the cold washcloth on, I realized that this really was all autonomic dysfunction. Because when I put the cold washcloth on my head, I went from having a fever to shivering, freezing cold in like a minute. And I was like, okay, so this is my temperature regulation is just not working. Because, like, then I was like, if I would take the covers off of me or I would put the covers on me, then I would be burning up hot again and stuff like that. Um, it was just a mess. And then so I was like, okay, this is some sort of autonomic dysfunction thing happening. But then I felt my heart and just kind of became aware of the fact that it was kind of beating out of rhythm. And I was like, I need to go to a doctor. So I did. I don't have any close family here, but my dad's cousin lives here and she's great. And so she came, and at this point it's like 10 and I'm dying. And so she comes and she picks me up. Or I guess it was more like 9:30. But yeah, and like, and not to get too graphic, but I was very sick. Like as soon as I stood up to like try and leave, everything I had eaten from the day came out. Like it was not a fun time. And so she takes me to the ER, and first thing they do, I'm like, I have dysautonomia, my heart doesn't feel right, and they were like, okay, we're gonna get you an EKG as fast as possible. Like literally before I had even, because they wanted to put me in a hospital gown because they need to put IVs and do all this stuff. Um, Before I was even in the hospital gown, the people from the department that has like the EKGs and stuff from the cardiology department were already all there waiting. And my cousin, I was like not phased by it because I knew that that's like the most important thing that they have to check. But my cousin was like, "Are you good?" And I was like, "I'm fine."
Freaking out.
I know. She was like, "This seems really serious." And I'm like, "I know, but like it's good." And it was fine. My EKG came back fine. And from then on I was like, "Okay, I'm ready to go home." And they're like, "No. Like you got to stay here." They gave me an IV anti-nausea stuff and I was fine. They just had to run tests to make sure that nothing caused it. But yeah, nothing at all caused it. I wasn't stressed. I didn't have anything going on. I didn't like overexert myself or anything. Sometimes that just happens. And so then for the next week, I was really exhausted. Um, yeah, all my professors were really concerned when I had to email them about what was going on, but I was like, I'm good. Don't worry about it. But yeah, it just took like probably a solid week and a half until I felt better. I wasn't allowed to do anything besides like go to class for a while and just rest. And then, of course, once I started feeling better, then I had all my exams this past week. So,
Mm.
anyway, that's why there was no episode for the past 3 weeks. Because both me and you just were not having a good
Yeah.
time. But we're both fine. We're both good. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. So, oh, and my, I guess not technically my sister-in-law, but they've been dating for 8 years, so at this point it's like whatever. Anyway, but she texted me and was like, congrats on making it to the hospital within the first month of school. And because she did the same thing and she was always like, as long as you don't do that, you're good. And then I did. So we're both in that club, Emma.
Yeah.
It's a good club.
No, it is not.
It's not a fun club to like, the people are great, you know?
People are great. Having the like initiation is not though. Or like
Yeah. So I feel like that's we've talked enough, you know? So, usually I have to give a refresher of what happened last time, but I'm pretty sure we all know how last episode
yeah.
ended. Everybody was so mad that I didn't update, and I was like, y'all, I'm in the hospital. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Um, but yeah, anyway. So, but if y'all remember, Lily and James, oh, we didn't jump into it. We need to jump into it. But
Yeah.
anyway, Lily and James decided that they weren't going to tell anybody because hello, she just
They
broke up
just
with
broke up.
like just. So, but they're stressed about how the frick they're going to hide their relationship because it's Lily and James. And
Yeah.
they're not good at hiding things and like being subtle. Like when you think subtlety, you don't think James Potter. You know what I'm saying?
You have to give
Um,
him like some credit though, because like no one
it is
knows he's like
a deer. I guess that's
yeah.
true. Yeah, so he does have some, but like Lily doesn't know that he's, hidden some pretty big things. So she's like, he has no idea how to do this. So she's pretty stressed about it. And she's like, okay, here's the plan. I'm gonna be sad about Thomas and want some time alone, and you just act completely normal. And James is like, okay, how am I supposed to act normal right now? She was like, good luck.
What is normal
Um,
for James?
for real. Um, she's like, okay, just act like how you would act if me and Thomas broke up, but like we didn't kiss. But also like don't make it too obvious. And he's like, okay, I'll try my best. It just feels like it's not gonna go well. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, the next day at breakfast, Lily waits a long time to arrive so that James can get there early and eat, and then she gets there so they like barely have to spend any time around each other, like around their friends, so that they don't do anything stupid. And so she comes down and she's like, "Morning, guys." And Remus is like, "No Thomas this morning." This is literally the morning after all of this happened. Okay, I need for you to know that. And she just looks at Remus and she's like, "We broke up last night." And Remus is like, oh, okay. Like, genuinely, like, surprised by this, but he's not, like, shocked. Like, nobody's shocked by this, you know? Um, so same with Sirius. He's just like, oh, dang, like, that kind of sucks. Um, but Peter is more surprised, and he's like, yo, what happened, though? And she's like, can we not talk about it, like, right here, right now? And then and then Remus is like, no, we don't need to talk about it here. And then I kid you not, he looks at James and is like, not with all of us around anyway. And grins at James. And James just goes bright red. And he's like, what the heck? She just broke up with him. And then Remus just like looks back and forth between them. And it's so obvious that Sirius like shoves him and is like, dude, what the heck? She just broke up. Um, yes.
Oh my gosh. Good for Remus, but like, bro, you're way too invested.
I know. He's got a lot of thoughts about this. Um, But anyway, so Sirius like shoves Remus and he's like, I'm sorry, Lily. Like that's just never fun. And Lily looks up. She's been like looking down this whole time, so she didn't notice this whole thing that just happened. But she's like, she's in like the acting zone, and she's like, yeah, I mean, it's really not fun. And so Sirius is like, okay, we're gonna move on from this conversation, and he just goes back to talking with Peter about like something with how they could do to how they could possibly get to the bottom of the Black Lake if needed. There was no reason that
You're
they should
right,
be talking
but
about
like,
this.
if this situation ever comes up, like,
Yeah.
it's good to have a plan.
That's what they're saying. But anyway, so they're doing that. They're having a good time. And then Remus and James eventually like are like, what the heck is going on here? But anyway, just before James is about to leave, thinking that he's like spent enough time to make it not awkward that he has to leave, but then he's like, I gotta get out of here because like we already almost ruined it, and it was the first sentence we spoke to our friends. um, but then behind him, somebody says Sirius, and Sirius looks up behind James to see his brother Regulus. Dun dun dun. His Death Eater brother that he hasn't spoken to
come on,
since
Regulus. I forgot
became
about that.
I know, since he became a Death Eater. So Sirius doesn't say anything, and he just looks at him and he's like, "What are you doing here?" But Regulus and
He's like, I know how to get to the bottom of the lake.
That would be such a him move.
He's like, I couldn't help but over here, but like,
it's on the other side of the Great Hall. He just knows. No, but he doesn't wait for Sirius to say anything. He hands him. No, he doesn't hand him. He nods to the newspaper that is laying next to Sirius, just on the table that he has not looked at, and he says, "Page 10. You'd want to know," and then immediately leaves. And Sirius is like about to say, he's like, yeah, get out of here, but he's like already gone. But then Sirius just like, he just looks at him leaving and like isn't saying anything, and Sirius is mad. Like he has only spoken to Regulus like since it happened, since he was like, yo, I'm a Death Eater, and yeah, no, it's not been a good time. And it wasn't, they didn't say pleasant things. Like the last thing he had been is like, if you ever come near me again, like I'm gonna fight you. I don't know. But at the same time, he senses that like Regulus has been kind of off since this whole thing has happened. Like he's still like kind of kept an eye on him. But anyway, so Regulus leaves, and it's not until he's like completely gone from the Great Hall that he like looks at the paper and like thinks about it, and then just looks back at his food and like is like, I'm not gonna do it. And Remus is like, okay, fine, I'll look. He's like and Sirius is like, okay, I don't care about what he wanted me to see. And Remus is like, yeah, but I'm curious.
I feel like Remus is just like thriving now that he's not involved in like any of the like drama anymore. He's like, he just gets to hear about everyone else's.
Remus in 7th year is the best Remus there is. He lives it up these next couple of episodes, and it's pretty great. But yeah, so anyway, but he also kind of knows that like Sirius would be curious, but he would also never look at it like himself, so he's like, I'm gonna see what it is, and then we'll figure it out. And James is the same way, so he's like, okay, what is it? And Remus is just looking at it, and he's like, it's the obituaries. And Sirius is interested now. He's like, yo, somebody died in my family? Like, who was it? Was it like, my cousins that I hate? Like, that might be kind of dope. But like almost excited by that. And Remus is like, yeah, but I've never heard of him. And he's like, who? And he's like, Alfred Black. Do you know Alfred?
Yes.
Yeah, we know him. Anyway, he's in the fandom. But Sirius was like, his face didn't really change, but like you could tell something was up with that. He was just like, oh. And it's like, it wasn't like he was exactly hurt, but like clearly surprised to be feeling like anything at all, And so Sirius is like, are you good? Like, not Sirius, Remus is like, are you good to Sirius? And he's just kind of comes back to reality, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm fine. He's like, he was fine, Alfred. Like He was like my great uncle, and he was just nice, which is rare in my family. Um, and Remus is like, I am so sorry. And he's like, don't be. He's like, I only met him like a few times, and that was like I was a kid. It was before Hogwarts. It's like it's not like we were besties. But yeah, and so then, James is like, I'm sorry. But he's like, I kind of gotta leave. And Peter's like, I'm gonna go with him because he doesn't know what to do here. Um, um, and so then, but yeah, so then they leave, and then Sirius begins just like muttering about like, why did Regulus feel like he had to come and tell me? Like he was the one. Like why would he have to do that? And he's like, he should have known to never to talk to me, and like why? There's probably some bad reason behind it. And Remus is like, or hear me out. He thought it might be nice to let you know that your great uncle, who wasn't all that terrible, died. Ever think about that?
Hmm.
And Sirius rolled his eyes and looks at Lily with like a look of like, can you believe that he just said that? But Lily is kind of like, I mean, he's got a point. Like, he didn't seem to have sinister intentions coming over here. He just kind of pointed out to you something, and Sirius is like, okay, all I'm saying is, um, he's a Death Eater. And Lily's like, and all I'm saying is he's 15. You said it yourself that first night. And then Sirius like just goes stone faced again. Um, but yeah, it's not fun. And then Remus is like, all I'm saying is you didn't make the best decisions at 15. And it's like, oh, oh shoot.
Not that bad of decisions.
No, not that bad, but like still he did almost kill his best friend at age 15. Like, let's be real here. And so Sirius is like, ooh, what the heck? And then he just like,
okay.
yes, remember?
Okay.
He almost killed Remus at age 15.
Literally, like all of them.
But it was kind of mainly Sirius. Anyway.
Well, I'm saying he almost killed like all of them. Like that was the issue.
Oh yeah. Anyway, point is, so Sirius looks like he's gonna scream at Remus, and Lily still has no idea that like the prank thing ever happened, and so she's kind of like, what are we referring to here? But also, I'm not gonna ask because Sirius looks really, really angry right now. But anyway, but Remus feels bad for saying that, and he's like, listen, neither of you two, and he like looks at Lily too, and he's like, neither of you have had a great morning. Let's go down to the kitchens and maybe get some food, like some sweet food, not just like breakfast, and stay down there for a while. And they're all like, yeah, let's do that. So they, Snuffles, you can't just, she just
Snuffles
moved to my,
can.
she's like, I will move against the computer because I feel like it. Anyway, so they get up to go, and as they're leaving the Great Hall, one of Thomas's very close friends catches Lily by the wrist, and he's like, I really thought you were nice, Lily. You know that? But I swear, if you cheated on Thomas with frickin' James Potter, and Lily's like, I did not. And then Remus like immediately is like, hey, dude, and he tells the guy to leave, but then immediately turns around to Lily and is like, he's like, she would never do that to the guy, and then turns around and is like,
did you?
He's like, what did you do? And she's like, I did not cheat on Thomas. And he's like, are you sure? And Lily's like, Remus? She's like, I would never cheat. I have no tolerance for that. Remember what happened like last year with that? And he's Bradley. And Remus is like, then why would he say that? And she's like, I don't know, because I broke up with his best friend last night, and I broke his freaking heart, and I feel really bad about it. And she's like almost in tears. She's had an emotional past couple of hours, honestly. And then Remus just feels bad, and he's like, okay, I know Lily would never cheat. And he's like, okay. He's like, I'm sorry, I just got pulled into the drama of this. He's like, let's just go to the kitchens. And they do, and they have a better morning. But yeah.
I
There
am
was
loving Remus right now.
I know. I feel like Remus is just kind of vibing. Like I don't know where it came from, but like it's gonna continue happening for the next couple episodes as well. I don't know if he knows where it came from. It's just kind of the vibes. All right. Next scene. Um it is Lily and James that night in like the prefect common room. So, James goes to meet her and he like has like the map so like none of the others could find him. And they're like and he's like, "Hey," and it's like it's a little awkward maybe because like they just kind of were like last night she was like, "I broke up with Thomas," and he was like, "Cool, let's make out." And then they did, and then they were like, "We can't tell anybody though," and then like that was it. So there's just kind of and
Yeah.
so James is like, "Okay, good news is I think we might have actually made it through the whole day without them noticing." And she's like, "Yeah, I think we did." She's like, "But with no help from frickin' Ryan or whatever his name was. Like, I don't know what Thomas's friend's name was. I didn't pick a name."
Jamus.
What? Jamus?
Jamus.
Thomas and Jamus. They only became friends because their names were similar. But she's like, but yeah, so she tells him about that. And James is like, "What the heck?" And she's like, I don't know." And he's like, Thomas wouldn't like tell his friends that you cheated, right?" And she's like, "No, Thomas would never do that. I'm sure it was just like Ryan like being blah." Which is true. Like, I'm not gonna have a plot twist where Thomas ends up being a jerk. That's not gonna happen. But she's like, "But he also probably wouldn't tell his friends what happened, like the truth of what happened, because that would be a little weird and not very fun to admit that your girlfriend dumped you for another dude." So she's like, "I'm not surprised by that." And James is like, "Man, you're right. You're so smart, Lily." But she just kind of keeps on looking at him, and he's like, "Shoot, what's wrong?" And she's like, "I mean, just talking to Remus and Sirius about how I would never, ever do something like that, and then them agreeing that it was really wrong. I mean," and James is like, "I swear, don't say it." And she's like, "I mean, it was pretty fast, right? Like, it wasn't even like 10 minutes after I broke up with him." And James just puts his head in his hands and he's like, "Lily, why can't we ever get this right?" And she's like, "It's fine, James." He's like, "No, it's not fine. We've been playing this stupid game for months. Months, Lily, all summer. And we finally work it out, and then we break up less than 24 hours later. It's a mess." And she's like, "We're not breaking up." He's like, "We're not?" And she's like, "No." And he's like, "Okay, good to know." He's like, that's good to hear." And Lily's like, "Dude," and she has to go and just sit down. And she's like, "No, you're right. We have been really stupid about this for way, way too long." But she's like, "But I don't want to. I feel like it would be really easy for us to just jump into everything and just go to being best friends, except now like we kiss. And I don't really want it to be like that. I don't want it to all be exactly the same, except like now we hold hands and like, make out in the hallways and like, do." And he's like, "Lily." And she's like, I really didn't plan." She's like, "James, I did not plan on kissing you last night. And I think maybe I gave you the wrong impression of like what I want." He's like, "Lily." She's like, "What?" He's like, "Do you think I'm not planning to like take you on like a real date?" And she's like that stopped her because she was low-key like, "Yeah, maybe I was thinking that." In all fairness, she had never just like kissed somebody without it being like an established like flirtationship situation beforehand. And so, a part of her figured that like that's just kind of off the table now. But now that he like said it out loud, it sounded really dumb. And she's just like, I don't know." And he's like, "Lily, He's like, I've been trying to get you to go on a date with me since
For
second year.
literally years.
He's
Like
like, literally for such a long time. He's like, I wasn't planning on just skipping that part now that we're also good friends. And she's like, when you say it like that, it sounds obvious. um, but yeah, so then they get quiet for a second, and James is like, no, but like I know what you mean. Like, I love being friends with you. That's great. But like if we're gonna try and be more, I want it to like feel different. And she's like, yeah, like I'm glad you get it. And then she's kind of like, in regards to like how fast it was though, and he's like, we can take as much time as you need. And she's like, well, it's not like I'm gonna need that much time. We already kissed. And he's like, so true. Um, but you
so
know,
true,
then
bestie.
literally. Um, but then he's like, okay, how about this? Would you, Lily Evans, like to go on a date with me a week from Friday? And she's like, we have a prefect meeting then. He's like, a week from Saturday. um, and she kind of pauses for a moment and is just like drinking it in. She's like, James Potter, like somebody that she had never thought about doing this. She's like, he's grown so much, like asking her on a date, and like she wanted to go. And so she's like, yeah, I would like that. Yay. And James is just so happy. And they just kind of sat like grinning at each other like stupid idiots for a while. And she's like, yeah, it's about time, right? And he's like, no. And Lily's like, and he's like, well, I mean, it did take a while. He's like, longer than I was anticipating. And she just kind of
He's
laughs.
like, whose fault is that? Like
um, but yeah, so she's just like, but then immediately James is like, so when did you first realize that you found me attractive? And Lily's like, she's like, I'm not answering that. And he's like, oh, so it was a long time ago. She's like, what? And he's like, well, if it was like this summer, like when we were practically dating for months, like you wouldn't be embarrassed to tell me that like that's when it was, you know, you would just tell me. And she's like, it was this summer. And he's like, see, now you're trying to lie to cover it up. I can't believe you. Um, and they're just like, she's just, it's so bad. And she's just debating what to say. And he's like, come on, it can't be that bad. And she's like, summer before sixth. And he's like, before? Before 6 year? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, we weren't even friends. And she's like, I know. And she's like, he just starts laughing like maniacally.
I love James.
And he's like, that's so bad, Lily. And, he's like, you hated me. She's like, I know. She's like, you were the worst, but you were attractive. And then she's like, you know, who knows? If you would have sent me those letters that you like had, maybe things would be different. Do you remember that? Like he wrote her all those letters in
Yes.
between that. Yeah, so she's like, I don't know, maybe if you sent them, things would have been different. And he's like, don't you dare say that. He's like, I thought about sending those so many times. He's like, don't play with me like this. But she's like, I know. She's like, no, and no, I think if you sent them, it would have made me more mad. But like, I did realize you were attractive, but I think I hated you more because of it. And he was like, okay, fair. Um, but yeah, so they just spend the rest of the night talking about like how embarrassing all of this has been. And just like figuring out like when, you know, each other's feelings for each other had like changed, even if they didn't even really know it. Um, you know, they talked about how like they did for a while, like they legit disliked each other, like for a solid while in sixth year. But then like somehow also almost kissed after that slug club meeting, and they're like, dude, like what even was that? And they're just like talking through it. It's just great. We love it. Um, but yeah, so they talked until it was like unreasonable for James to like tell the others that they were only like doing prefect stuff, and so James was like, okay, I gotta go. And when James leaves, they didn't kiss, but it wasn't like weird. There's no wondering. Like they would just kind of figure things out as it goes, and it's fine, and they don't need to force anything, because you know she just broke up with Thomas, so they're gonna go back to taking things slow, and I think you know they're gonna like make it like they're actually dating and like kind of try and progress that way while also just being friends. So it'll be nice. We'll get to see that. Yeah, so that's the end of that scene. And now we have a short little something something. Um, so this scene is gonna center around Peter for a second. Um, because we gotta get into some Peter arcs. Anyway,
Is this like
um,
a good arc or like a he's evil arc?
it's just an arc, and
Okay.
um, so yeah, so if Peter was being honest, he really isn't sure how to feel about his friends right now. Like they've always been super nice to him, and like he likes hanging out with them, but lately things have been weird. Especially these past couple days, and he has no idea why. But anyway, we know it's because of Lily and James, but he doesn't know that. But like yes, he understood that like Lily and James have their like head boy and girl stuff to do, and like they got to spend time together. And then he understands that like Remus and Sirius are dating and they want to spend time together. But recently he's like low-key kind of mad that like none of them have been paying attention to him. Like, and that is true. I will say this isn't like him just like pulling things out of nowhere. Like it just kind of feels like they don't care and like they're not even noticing. So like something for sure has changed. And like even though he's like surrounded by his friends, he starts to feel like really alone, like all the time. Like even when he's with them, it doesn't feel right. Like it just feels like they're kind of focused on their own thing
Yeah.
and he's just kind of here. So anyway, so he's found himself spending more and more time like in the library alone. Um, and the thing is that none of them really seem to notice, which is sad. But anyway, so he had been here so many times that there's like kind of a rhythm to like who's usually in the library when he would go and study, like, you know, the people who usually show up to study there. And he finds like a quiet place where like the only person like really near him is like this one Slytherin girl that he like vaguely knows because she's in his year. And her name is Kyra Folly. And she is from like one of the huge like Sacred 28 like big pureblood
Wow.
families. Yeah, she's kind of up on Sirius's level if we're being honest. But but yeah, so like she's known to be friends with like Avery and Mulciber, and like if you had to guess who's gonna be a Death Eater upon graduating, like she's there, you know? And
Apparently,
he's
it's
like,
not
maybe
even upon graduating
yeah,
anymore.
yeah,
Yikes.
and that's my next line. It says, or maybe she already was. I mean, they know about Regulus. um, but yeah, so but she keeps to herself, and he keeps to himself, and it's like fine, and like you know they go weeks, and neither of them talk to each other, and it's just it's fine. Until this week, for whatever reason, uh, you know, both Lily and James and Sirius and Remus are off doing whatever they were doing. Um, and Peter is just all alone. And he's, you know, been in the library a lot more this week. He was already there like almost every time that Cairo would come in to study because, you know, he's there all the time. Um, and so, but one of these days he got up to try and find yet another book that he would like barely pay attention to. And Kyra actually speaks to him. And she's like, so Pettigrew, what's the deal with you and your little friends? And he like stops and he looks at her and he's like,
Hmm.
what are you talking about? And she's like, I'm talking about whatever happened so that you barely hang out with them anymore. And Peter's like,
The fact that she's the first one to notice that and like
and
not
so he doesn't I know. So he doesn't say anything for a second. He's like, how does this random freaking Slytherin realize it? And like his own friends haven't really. And he's like, why do you care? And she's like, I don't. But in case you hadn't noticed, there's been literally nothing interesting going on in the school unless you care about Lily Evans' love life, which I don't. Um, and she's like, you know, in fact, I usually hate hearing anything that has to do with like your whole group, but like one of you leaving, there has to be a good story here. And Peter's like, okay. He like, and he's thinking back and he's like, okay, yeah, this girl like just likes to gossip and like she's fine, you know, not really a threat or anything. And he's like, sorry to disappoint, there's no story. And she's like, there's no story. And she's like, yeah, sure, you guys never used to be seen alone, and now you're all alone in the library like all the time. And it's not like me, like I just come here because my friends are annoying and I can't study with them. Like you're avoiding them. And she's like, why? And Peter's like, he's like, ever hear of friends growing apart as they get older? Like, there's no story. Nothing happened. We're still friends. We just don't have to spend tons of time around each other. And Kara just looks at him and she's like, with a face that's just like, I don't believe it. And so she's like, well, I'm glad you realized you have pretty horrible friends, you know, in any case. And he's like, they're not horrible. They're great, actually. And she's like, right. She's like, all I'm saying is,
He's like,
if I
that's
stop.
why you're here alone.
She's like, all I'm saying is, if I stopped hanging out with my friends suddenly, they would notice and they'd want to talk about why. And Peter doesn't say anything. And she's like, and I used to think that Gryffindors were supposed to be loyal. And Peter just doesn't want to deal
He's
with
like,
her.
that's Hufflepuff.
So he grabs his bags and just leaves to another area without saying a word. So that's tough. That is a tough moment for Sirius.
It's a moment for
Sirius. It's a tough moment for Sirius because he's not even here. No. No, but yeah, Peter. I mean, think about it. If they're both paired up, there's bound to be times Peter's. Yeah, it's not really a good time for him. I'm sorry. Anyway, next scene. This scene's fun. This scene is one of my favorite TikToks that I've ever made. Forever ago, and people kept on being like, when is it going to be in here? And I decided to put it here rather than in a different context that was actually in the TikTok. So anyway, in case it sounds familiar, it is. So Sirius and Remus are, you know, studying with Lily. Oh wait, no, we got to go back a little bit before that. So Sirius and Remus have been talking together a lot about whether or not Lily broke up with Thomas because she realized she has feelings for James. This is a big discussion between them. Like, you know, every night they used to talk about their own feelings, and now they're like, okay, so what's up with
like,
Lily?
What's going on?
Like, seriously, I want to be like every single night. It's been like,
They're
okay,
like, they compare their notes.
Yes. Being like, what's going on? But like, they're picking up on like nothing, even though they are like I want to say other people in the school are like, oh yeah, they're very clearly dating each other, but like their friends have no idea, you know? But anyway, so they've been it's been a lot of back and forth of especially Sirius being like, okay, I'm sorry, I still don't see it. I don't think she knows that she likes him. I think they would be great together. I think it would be perfect, but I don't think that she likes him. And Remus being like, you're blind. So there's a lot of that. And so anyway, so Remus is like, you got it. Like, just watch me do this. You know, at this study session, we're gonna figure it out. And he's like, yeah, sure. So anyway, so they're together
Remus
studying.
didn't even like bring any of his homework. Like, he's
No.
on a sole mission here.
Yeah, but anyway, so Lily is really like, I feel like right now, especially because she's been hanging out with James so much, she's got a lot on her brain and a lot of homework, and so she's like actually trying to get stuff done here. And that's basically what Remus wanted, because he wanted her to talk without really thinking about it. So anyway, so she's pretty aggressively studying, and Remus just like starts going off on this tangent about how this girl, like this random girl that like they barely know, he's like, yeah, she like is really interested in me, and I'm not really seeing why, because like, you know, it's just, you know, I haven't really shown that I'm like interested for obvious reasons, but like, why does that happen? Like, why are girls like, you know, interested in me? And she's like, well, I don't know, you're like attractive and popular and funny, like I don't know, she's busy. And Remus is like, oh, so you think I'm attractive? And Lily like looks up for a second. She's like, dude, I'm not saying I'm interested in you, but yeah, sure. But yeah, and she's like, anyway, what's this? And she's like asking Sirius about this homework, but Remus keeps on going. He's like, we're not giving up on this. And so he's like, so like girls like me just because I'm hot? And she's like, not exclusively. You're also nice, respectful, like, I don't know, Remus, you're a great dude. Don't be so hard on yourself. He's like, I'm not being hard on myself. I'm just trying to see like what girls think is attractive. So what about Sirius? And she's like, what? And he's like, what do girls see in Sirius? And she's like, and she's like, I don't know, probably like the hair and like the bad boy thing, you know? The fact he's like rebellious, but like it's for a good cause, you know? Girls like that. And he's like, okay, cool. Like, I get that. Now, what about James? Why do girls like James? And she just immediately is like, probably his face, you know? There's not like a bad part of his face. And he's like, really? And Sirius is like, oh, okay. He's like, okay, we can live with this. She said that we all were attractive. Like, this isn't that weird. Um, but Remus is like, so people only like James for his face. And she's like, well, no, I'm sure it helps though. Like, I mean, he's got like the whole like athletic thing going on, you know, with Quidditch and stuff. Girls usually like that. And like he keeps in shape a lot, obviously, with like his runs and
His
like,
morning runs.
yeah, his morning runs. Like he's got to work out and like do all that. So he has like those weird like arm vein things that like girls really think are attractive. And Remus is like, really? That's
Specific
so
than like I like his hair, I guess. Like for Sirius.
no, this is exactly as specific as she was with the others. I don't know what you're talking about. But Remus is like, really? That's cool. And she's like, but it's not just his looks, you know? Like, he also, like, is really nice, especially, like, now that he's head boy and stuff. And, like, you know, the way he, like, tries and helps out the first year and tries to be a good role model to them is, like, really appealing to girls, I think, to other girls. Like, that day he, like, helped that first year get, like, their cat out of the tree. Like, that was really nice. Like, I heard other girls talking about that. And Remus was like, "Is that so?" And she's like, "Yeah, but there's like this whole other side to him where he's like super confident, but like you get the feeling that he kind of has no idea what he's doing, so he can be really sensitive, and he's like not afraid to take other people's advice." Like and like he's willing to fight for like what he believes him and just yeah, like I think that's mainly why girls like him. And Sirius is just like, it is finally hitting him. Finally hitting Sirius that she might actually be interested in James. And this is a big deal. Um, but then of course you gotta end it with Remus being like, and Peter? And she's like, what about Peter? And he's like, why do girls find Peter attractive? And she's like, oh, I don't know, Peter's nice. And he's like, cool.
Like good to know.
Yeah. And so then they like leave the room, and Lily has no idea what she's done. But anyways, once Remus and Sirius leave the room, Sirius loses his mind. He's like, "Oh my gosh, we have to get them together." And Remus is like, "That's what I'm saying. Like it's so obvious. They have to realize that they like each other sooner or later. But like we obviously got to push them together." Yeah. So moral of the story is everybody can be clueless at times. Um.
Oh.
I love that story. Next scene. Another little Peter thing, sorry. But anyway, at this point, it's probably been about 5 days since James and Lily, like, started secretly dating. And things are getting tough to hide, mostly because they're both really dumb. And so the next time Peter comes into the library, yeah, I don't know why I put that at the beginning of the scene. It has nothing to do with it. Anyway, the next time Peter comes into the library, Kyra stops him again, and she's like, okay, if you're still friends with him, what is up with Sirius and his uncle that died? And he's like, what? I don't know, man. He's like, you're really expecting me to have all this gossip, and I just don't. But he's like, what do you mean? And she's like, I mean, his uncle died, and it's been 5 days, and nobody has any idea who's getting the money. And he's like,
it's like, what?
He's like, okay, and she's
like, it's not me if that's what you're asking. Like,
she's like, are you getting the money? No. And he's like, and she's like, yeah, he was the most loaded member of that family. Like, it has been this huge, like, Ministry of Magic level secret about who's gonna get it. Like, so does Sirius know? And he's like, Sirius knows nothing about his family. And she's like, really? And he's like, uh-huh. And she's like, so he really did just like leave? And he's like,
he's probably more involved in that family than he is. Like,
yeah, she is, but she certainly doesn't think she is. And she's like, so he really just left his family? And he's like, yeah, he did. And Kyra just sits back and she's like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And she's like, I mean, like, I know for a fact that like the Sacred 28 life is like not always fun or healthy, or what it's kind of made out to be, but to leave it, she's like, Dude, she just kind of trails off. Um, and then she's like, anyway, I guess I got to keep on pestering Regulus. He definitely knows something about it, which is why I asked you in case Sirius knew. But everybody says it's going to like his parents. But Narcissa Malfoy, or I guess she's Narcissa Black at this point, probably. But she's like, but Narcissa insists she was his favorite and she's gonna get it and stuff. And Peter is just like opening his book, like, I don't want to talk to
like,
you.
Okay.
He's like, this is cool. But anyway, and she takes the hint and they just kind of study. But then later that night, Peter's curiosity gets the better of him because he's like, okay, like, what is this whole thing about? And so he's kind of like, Sirius, like, you don't have to answer this, I guess, but like, I've kind of been hearing that. Oh yeah, that was the other thing. Kyra said like everybody's talking about this. Like, I can't believe you haven't heard. So he's like, I don't know, kind of heard some people talking about like, that great uncle of yours that died, like, had a lot of gold and stuff. And they don't really know where it's going. And Remus like gets so tense, but Sirius is actually kind of looks fine with this. And he's like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, I'm sorry, I just don't really need to bring it up, but like I just don't really know why people care so much. And he's like, because every time somebody old in my family or any of the Sacred 28 dies, it's like a big deal because it's like winning the lottery. Everybody sucks up to them as hard as they can while they're alive, and then once they die, you like see who the favorites were. And Peter's like, yeah, but like it can't always be just like family members. Like, don't most like rich wizards like give it to charity or like, the ministry,
Yeah.
something like that? And Sirius is like, they can't. Like, at least in my family, like it has to stay in the family. Like you can't like sign anything off in your will. You either have to give it in life or like, something like that. And he's like, it's literally like a contract. Like, the money is basically cursed. Like, there's all of this magic that goes into it. You have to give it to a well-respected family member. And so he's like, so I'm out, He's like, it's not going to me. And Peter is like, oh. And like suddenly he feels like really weird. And he's like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have brought that up. And he's like, Sirius is like, no, I've heard people talk about it too. Like, I've heard some freaking Hufflepuffs talk about it. Like, this just kind of again, there's not really a lot of drama going on right now. So it's kind of what the people are talking about. No, but he's like, it's fine. He's like, I do honestly think it's like probably gonna go to Narcissa though. Even though it usually goes to older family members, like, he liked her, so it'll be fine. So anyway, next morning at breakfast, the vibes are, this is the first time Lily and James have like not figured out like a good excuse to like just come into breakfast normally together. Like, they keep on trying to go and do different things for every meal, not just breakfast. But they're like, this morning they're like, we can't think of an excuse. They're like, we're just gonna have to sit together. And then they walk in and the only two seats are like next to each other, and so it's, yeah, so they just sit next to each other and they're like, this is fine. This isn't nerve-wracking at all. Like, we don't need a distraction from this. And luckily their friends are kind of clueless. But yeah, no, they have not been a good job of being secretive about this. But anyway, of course, the first question asked is Sirius's casual. So, where were you last night, James? And Lily just immediately looks down at her food, and James just like low-key starts to blush, because what had happened last night where Lily and James were supposed to be like observing rounds, and instead they ended up going through the tunnel to Honeyduke's and picking up a lot of butterbeer. And they had just stayed out much later than they were supposed to, and it had been a solid good time. But no, James is not going to admit that. And so he's like, we just got really caught up doing the rounds last night. And Sirius is like, yeah. He's like, what were you really doing? And he's like, just rounds. And then Sirius happens to glance at Lily and notices that she's looking down at her food and her cheeks are starting to look a little bit pink. And then he looks back at James in disbelief and he almost puts it together. And then he is saved by a very important envelope dropping right in front of him. Like it has a big seal on it and everything. And he glances down for a second and does a double take. And then he grabs Remus's arm next to him so that he's looking at it. And he's like, why is the Ministry of Magic writing to me? And the first thought is he's immediately stressed because they've done a lot of illegal things. in their lives.
What?
He's like, so did they find out that I'm secretly an animagus, and like, did they find out? Everybody has like anything. He's pretty stressed about it. And Remus is like, open it. So he picks it up, and that's when the second package falls. And this one is from Gringotts. And then Sirius kind of realizes it. He's like, oh my gosh, I think I got money from Alfred. And he's like, holy crap. So he tears open the mystery letter that's like already in his hand. And then he like, there's several pages of stuff. But the first one is a notice that he is in fact in his great uncle Alfred's will. And he's like, shoot, what the heck? And so like he like skims that first page and he goes to the next page, which is the will itself. You know, it says it at the top. But he's shocked to find that it's super short. It's just one sentence. And it says, I hereby leave my entire estate, including any property I might own, and all the money in my possession to Sirius Orion Black, the only person with enough courage to leave this family. And he's like, Sirius is like stunned into silence. He was like, I thought I was gonna get like a cool like 50 galleons. And he's like, what the frick? And he's like, he legitimately cannot believe it though. He's like his great uncle Alfred, like the guy he's met twice. Like, yeah, he was like a sarcastic dude and he seemed nice. And like, you know, when he was 8, his mom was like, you gotta fix your hair. And he was like, no, he doesn't. But like, no, like this should not happen. He's like, what the heck? Like, I have not seen him since I was 10. What is going on? And then so he's just staring at it. Remus can't take it any longer. So he like reads the will over his shoulder and just like gasps like this, like, bro, what the heck is going on? And then Sirius looks at Remus and he's like, no. He's like, no. He wasn't allowed to. He has to give it to a family member, and there's magic involved, and like mom disowned me. Like when I left, she always said that she would. Like he's not allowed to do this. And so then James is like, what are they talking about? So he reaches over and he grabs the page and he just looks at it and he's like, all of it? And Sirius is like, no, he can't. Like he would have known that he can't do that. Like it says right there, like I left the family. Like in the will it says that. And so, but then Remus looks down and there's several more pages of stuff in Sirius's hands and he's like, keep reading. And so he does. And sure enough, the rest of the ministry note contained the fact that Alfred had spent the last several years of his life undoing any and all legal and magical protection on how he could spend his money and who it could be left to, and explained how after he died, when like his next of kin heard where the money was supposed to go, they tried to do everything they could and like had everything reviewed like thousands of times, which is why it had taken a couple days for it to show up, because they were trying to figure out if there was anything not done, like even just like a remote like tiny mistake that they could say like, oh, like he didn't mean to do this or blah blah blah. But there was no mistakes. He had done it legally and entirely secretly. Everybody thought he was totally on board with this family, but in reality he really wasn't, for the last couple of years of his life at least. He had never planned on giving any of his money to anybody in the family, but then after Sirius left, then he changed it and gave it to Sirius. So then it comes, then he reads, so he's like reading this and he's like, holy crap, like this is insane. And then it comes to the actual amount that is going to be handed to him. Because it doesn't say actual amounts in Last Will and Testaments, because, you know, they can be written kind of whenever. But it is 700 million galleons. For reference, dang. I looked up the conversion rate on galleons because, of course, how much a
galleon is, but 700 million of anything is
I know, lot. But 700 million, a galleon is about $7.25. So this is like billions of dollars.
Oh my gosh.
And he just looks at that and like he's like, what the heck? Because he's like, I knew that like Alfred was like loaded, like everybody was like sucking up to him and stuff, but not like this. Like what the heck? He's like, the Potters like were richer. He knew that the Potters were richer than his parents, and they had like 100 million galleons. So he's like, what is this? What is going on?
Who's this guy?
And so he's like, what the heck is this? And so Yeah, he's just like, what is happening? And so then he like gets to the last page and it's just like assuring Sirius that he's like not legally required to give any of the money to anybody in his family, like no matter what they say. Um, and it's like his and it's his alone. And he's just like in a daze. And so then he finally like opens the package from Gringotts and sure enough it has the key to like one of the biggest vaults there. And he's like, what the heck? Can you not move Snuffles? She just really sat on my computer, babe. Sorry. Anyway, um so he's a little
A little shocked, I would say.
a little shook. So he opens up the Gringotts thing, it has the key and a letter from Alfred that was meant to be given with the key. Um so he starts reading this letter too, and he's like not really saying anything because how could you? And so like the others are kind of reading everything like after he is, like after he puts down a page, they like pick it up and they're like, dude, what the heck is going on? Um so anyway, so then he starts reading this and it's like it explains that like although he only met Sirius a few times, he had never stopped hearing about him. Alfred always like played his role pretty well, pretending to agree with his family on mostly everything. And so his parents had like tried to suck up to Alfred by telling them like how Sirius had left and how well they had handled the situation and everything like that, and how they had disowned him. And instead, he was like, "I'm gonna give all my money to Sirius," because he was like, Sirius. He's like, it became better than the rest of us because I think in his letter, I think Alfred like kind of always thought that he was like kind of better than everybody else because he didn't believe in it, but he was also very hypocritical because he never actually like left the family. He still stayed and like was this rich guy and like did all that type of stuff. And so it wasn't until because nobody had ever really left the family besides Andromeda, who was also his like second favorite. Um but even then she had like I think very quietly left and like not really made it a big thing and like still pretended to the outside world like her parents were like, "Oh yes, she's studying abroad," But like he had made
like
it very
serious, everyone knew.
Yeah, everybody knew and everything like that, and he was like I think Alfred said like it made me realize like that I had been a hypocrite too because I didn't really realize that you could do that. And anyway, so it's just a really cool letter. And he's like, yeah, and he's like, and you deserve it more than anybody else. So here it is. Here's the money. And Sirius has no idea how to feel at this point. Like, on one hand, he's like, wow, somebody on the family was, like, on my side. And on the other hand, he's like, he let me struggle alone. But then on the other hand, he now has 7 million galleons.
Yeah. Like, he will never have to, like,
do anything. Ever. And then he just starts to, like, laugh because what else do you do? And then he starts to swear very loudly. And he's like, what the frick is going on here? Except he isn't saying frick. And he's like, I have more money than my father ever did. Like, ever. And he bragged so much to everybody about how much money he's like, and I ended up with the most. He's like, what the heck? And just like, and people around him are like starting to notice because he's not really being quiet about this whole thing. And he's like, I ended up with 700 million galleons. And just like, as he's saying it, like people are like turning and being like, what the heck? And he doesn't care. And then another letter lands on the table. And this one's from Wahlberga. And in spite of Remus being like, dude, just don't open that, he was like, nah, I'm gonna open this. And it's her demanding to give the money where it rightfully belongs, which is to her or to Regulus. And he just is like, my mom is begging me for money. He's like, she wants my help. What? He's like, what is happening right now? He's like, this is, holy crap, like what is this? And then like he suddenly like he's been all like happy and like, oh my gosh, I have this, and then he comes down to earth and he's like, this is too much money, what am I doing? And Remus was like, it's all right, you're gonna be fine, because he's like starting to freak out now. And then Minerva approaches the table and she's like, what is going on over here? And he's like, I just inherited 700 million galleons. And she's like, and I'm the Minister of Magic. What's actually going on
And
here?
he's like, congratulations then. Like,
no, and so James is like, he still like had the will, and so he hands it to her, and she just stops short. And after like 30 seconds, because the others just start giggling at her face because she's like, bro, what the heck? And she's like, I suggest that we take this somewhere a little bit more private. Maybe my office, maybe anywhere except the Great Hall at breakfast. And then Sirius is like, oh yeah, we should probably do that because yeah, this is a lot of money and maybe I shouldn't be the center of the tension about this. So anyway, so they like gather everything up and like follow her off, and as they leave, Regulus at the end of the Slytherin table gets up to like kind of go with the group, and he's just like, how much? And Sirius is like, all of it. And like he just says it, and for once he like doesn't care that it's like his brother that he's speaking to because he's just like so shocked. And in a moment that like Sirius would later look back on and be really confused about because what the heck, Regulus just grins and is like, I hoped so. And Sirius grins back, and for a second they're just like kids again who have just like pulled like a huge prank on their parents. And then Regulus is like, spend it well then, okay? And Sirius is like, I'll do my best. And with that, Regulus is gone. And so then like Sirius continues to walk down the hallway, and then like 2 minutes later he's like, wait, what the heck? Regulus just talked to me. And so then he like turns around, but like Regulus is long gone at that point. But then it kind of clicks for him. And he like, Regulus told me to look at the newspaper the other night, or the other day, because he figured something like this would happen. Like, he just knows. But like how much, and then he's like, how much had Regulus known? Because he had to know something. If his parents had like been fighting to get the money away from Sirius, he must have known like earlier. But yeah. And that's kind of the end of the episode.
wow.
Is that kind of realization. Yeah, I don't know. I was gonna also say how like his decision-making process and what he ends up doing with the money, but I feel like that can be next episode, you know? But yeah, I've always loved, because was that like purely fan fiction that said that he inherited that money, or did he actually say that in the books? I feel like he said it in the book, right? That he inherited something from Alfred, just like it didn't say how much.
I don't know.
I think it did. I'm gonna look that up. See, this is the issue. I've always
been a while since I read like Order of the Phoenix or something.
I know, and then like... the thing is like I get so like I've had everything in my version planned out for a very long time, and so then I'm like, what did I pull like when I was originally making this? What did I pull from the books and what was just fiction? So but I know that Alfred was at least mentioned in the books. Yes, in his will he left a decent amount of gold. That's what was said. So I would say 700 million.
Decent.
I'd say that's a decent amount of gold. I also feel like, yeah, and it said that he left it to him after he left it to him in his will after. Okay, yeah, so most of this was real. But yeah, I feel like Sirius, like later when he's telling Harry, would certainly be like, yeah, like a decent amount. It was like a good amount. I feel like, yeah, in the next episode we'll get into this, but I think this briefly, I don't think Sirius is okay with this, and I'm gonna, I guess, spoil the next episode a little bit, but like whatever. He's gonna give most of this away to Muggle charities because of course.
You can't even spend that much money. Like
exactly.
It's like so insane.
So yeah, so he splits it up in a lot of different places.
Yeah.
But I do think that Sirius briefly, before he gives all of it away, and I think he does that pretty quickly because he doesn't want to have it, but I think it makes him briefly the richest wizard in the world. Because this would be like a multi-billionaire that we're talking about here in the 1970s. So we're going to say that Alfred was legitimately, Sirius didn't know this because he never paid attention to anything in his family, but was legitimately the richest person in the world, and then gave all of his money to Sirius. Yeah, so after this, Alfred was removed from the Black family tapestry by Sirius's mother, because she's going to be mad about this a little bit, and that is also canon. Oh yeah, because he was telling Harry about this when he was going through the tapestry, and he was like, "Oh yeah, he got burned off because he left me gold." Um, but yeah, after he died. So anyway, so that's my background on how it happened. But I've always thought about that because Sirius had to have had like a lot in order to join the war and not have to do anything and like devote his entire life right outside of Hogwarts to that. And I also, and then like,
Even
also
after the whole
and then
like,
after
prison thing.
and then after that he had to have enough to just like pay for whatever amount for a Nimbus 2000 and like whatever it was. No, for the Firebolt, whatever. Yeah, when he paid for the Firebolt, it was like implied to be like way too much money. And so I'm like, man's had to he just had to have it stockpiled. I think he just basically had an unlimited amount of money, but like nobody ever really knew about it. So anyway, those are the vibes. Hope everybody enjoyed the episode. Anything to add?
Wow, that's a lot of money. I don't know.
A lot of money. I just wanted it to be like a hilariously obnoxious amount, you know? Just like too much. Like to the point where the entire Black family was like, we're gonna like it's gonna be split between like a lot of people and we're all still gonna get a lot of money. And then
it was just Sirius.
I just love it. I think that would be so funny. But yeah. Yeah.
I'm really vibing with Remus too.
I know. Like, I love Remus right now. He's living it up. So yeah, thank you so much for watching and listening, and also putting up with no posts for a while. Again, we're gonna try and make it regular, but if we end up in the hospital again, that probably won't happen. Unfortunately, there's not much we can do about that.
You did post that one video.
I did. That was like a weird. I had like an hour and a half, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do this. So yeah. So if you're like a Spotify listener, I did a video where I put the Marauders and my OCs from the podcast into a Hunger Games simulator, and it was a lot of fun. So yeah, so go check that out if you want. Yeah, but that didn't take very long to make. It wasn't like this where I have to like actually write it and like figure out a time to do it. It was literally, there was no thought process in making that video. It was just I sat down and I did it and then I posted it. But yeah, so hopefully things will go back to somewhat normal. Yeah. I feel like, especially like now I really feel like I'm in the swing of things, and so if nothing else insane happens, I feel like I should be able to write on like a weekly or at least a bi-weekly schedule for sure. Or not bi-weekly,
every other week.
Yeah, every other week, because bi-weekly would be twice a week.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do that. But we'll figure it out. Yeah, and again, if you want to keep up with random stuff like this, YouTube community tab and also my Instagram are good places to check. Shout out to Benji for the music and Metamorph Matis for the cover art. And yeah, that is pretty much it. Bye!